January 2018, CES. I want to set the scene. January 28th, CES. Autel Robotics had a huge announcement, and it was their first portable, foldable drone. It didn't quite look like a Mavic, but it had similar characteristics, and a lot of people were really excited. They were excited because it shot 4K 60, it had better flight time, it boasted a stronger design than the Mavic at the time, and there was no flight restrictions. Thus, the EVO was born. And we waited 6 months after its announcement at CES to actually get it in our hands. Matter of fact, the EVO 1 was probably the drone that cut my channel's teeth the most, I guess I would put it that way. It was my first real drone release that I actually had an advantage over almost every other influencer. And I used that drone a lot, and it was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. But even as phenomenal as it was, it had a lot of issues straight out of the gate. It had horizon tilt. It had an issue with batteries. It didn't fly all that well. And Autel made a tremendous amount of strides and improvements during that time frame. But it's come to its end of life. And Autel's recently announced today that they are going to cease to produce the EVO 1. And we're talking about that and what that means if you own one currently in 2021. Let's get started. What's good, everybody? Ken here. You're watching OriginaldoBo. Today we're talking about the end-of-life procedure for the EVO 1. Now, this is only the EVO 1 that we're talking about, but it should honestly affect a pretty small amount of users. Now, we're in 2021, June 2021. When this was first actually in consumers' hands, it was 3 years ago from today. 3 years ago from today. Actually, a little more than 3 years ago. It's 3 years ago in a week, but who's getting technical anyways. Autel has decided that they're going to start the end-of-life procedure for that drone. Now, end-of-lifing a product is nothing new for a company. Some companies do it sooner, some do it later. In this instance, Autel is doing it sooner. I've seen a lot of comments where people are really pissed, they're upset, they're never buying Autel again. And I hate to break it to you, anybody could do this at any point. When you buy a new drone, when you buy any product for that matter, there is no contractual obligation from the manufacturer to support it for any X number of years. It's up to the manufacturer's discretion on how long they will support that product. You got 3 years of continuous support out of the EVO 1. It's pretty good. To be quite honest, because these drones aren't necessarily self-serviceable and repairable by the end user for the most part, 3 years is a long time and longer than I would feel comfortable flying any one airframe. So honestly, I really don't feel bad. Not to mention that the fact that this drone had so many freaking issues, it's time to sunset it because there's better things on the horizon that cost about what that cost at the same price point as when it first came out. Anyways, Autel's decided that December 31st, 2021, they're going to do the end of availability. So as of right now, if you look at Autel's website, you can buy the EVO 1 refurbished for $699. After the 31st, and maybe even before that, you'll notice that that will go away. Eventually, you'll also notice that retailers will stop selling it as their stocking fulfillments no longer be fulfilled. They're not going to have any more stock to fulfill the orders on. So take this as a heat of caution to somebody who's looking at a new drone and sees this as a tangible option. Just know that parts and availability are going to get really scarce after this happens on December 31st. Let's fast forward to June 2022. They are end-of-lifing it, meaning they will no longer support it, meaning if you ask them to repair it, they're no longer going to be repairing it. There's no longer going to be any future firmware upgrades for that unit. Now, does this mean that that drone is going to stop working on the June 2022? No, that doesn't mean it's going to stop. It doesn't mean it's going to fall out of the air. They're not perma-bricking your drone. They're just not doing anything more as far as maintenance releases, software upgrades, or anything to enhance the quality of the drone. This also means if you have a battery fail or a component break, you're shit out of luck because there isn't going to be anything they will do for you. That is what it is, unfortunately, in this industry. every business model is a little bit different, and it's hard to compare Autel to DJI, and I'm not saying what they're going to do with this drone is necessarily better or worse, but you have to understand that in their particular lineup, there are only 3 releases in on their drones, meaning they've had the X-Star, the EVO 2, and yeah, if you had $140,000, we could toss in the Dragonfish as well. So they're only 3 releases deep. And as a small team, they do have a really small team and they have a small facility. Choices have to be made, and you've had your drone for 3 years, you've had continuous support, and it would be selfish to keep supporting those devices. As mad as this is going to make you, I get it. You're an EVO 1 owner, you're passionate about it, you don't want to have to buy another drone, but you're being told that it's not being supported. It sucks. It does suck. But the reality is, in order to better the brand and push a brand forward, they have to make cuts. Unfortunately, the EVO 1 didn't make that cut. Does this mean that the EVO 2 will suffer the same fate? Well, we don't know. The difference between the EVO 1 and the EVO 2 are pretty drastic. And the reality is, there is removable payloads on the EVO 2. So I guess the incentive to try to perfect and pursue other avenues on the EVO 2 are a little bit different. But if we think about it, they are sort of sunsetting the EVO 2 as well, but the V1 version because of the chipset. So eventually they're going to an entirely different direction. Now I know there's a lot of salty X-Star users out there. And again, a lot of that really has to do with how the company was ran prior to the new management today. There's a whole new forward set of thinkers at Autel looking to sort of save a ship that's not necessarily sinking, but they're taking on a little bit of water. So in order to correct things, they have to sort of pull the old regime's band-aids, their wounds off, and they have to do it fast. And if they wait any longer, well, you may take on too much water and you may sink. So hopefully that's in a perspective you can understand. But again, the reality is none of these things last very long. I recently got rid of my Mavic 2 because I felt like it was getting dated, it was getting old. I replaced it. Again, not every hobbyist is going to want to replace it, but nothing lasts forever. So I would just say learn to not have an emotional attachment to the drones that you own, because 1, at any point they could fall out of the air, and 2, it's a freaking piece of hardware. They're meant to be upgraded. All right. At that point, I'm going to go ahead and call this a video. If you want to read this full article from Autel, I'll link it down below. It was posted on Facebook, but I'm just paraphrasing some things that they put here. Nothing's been an official statement directly from them, but I hope this was somewhat useful for you. And if you do have an EVO 1, enjoy it, because it's still going to work for a long time until you break something. Then you're pretty much fucked after June 2022. All right, stay original.
Is it too late to say I'm sorry?